It's really interesting. I was just sitting back and enjoying my time in the parenting realm when I was looking through the YouTube comments and I saw some slander for this particular team talking about, man, you haven't revealed these guys yet, and there's no way that you could have them at least 110 or even so much as being higher than that. And you know what? I think it's time to maybe mix things up and spice things up a little bit and go into a deeper look into what I have not just at 106 as the recording of this video, but maybe even venture into our top 100. So hopefully you guys are excited for, something a little bit different, still revealing 138 programs from the 50,000 feet perspective, but going a little bit out of order because I wanted to defend this specific team's honor because I saw it in the comment section the other day. And let's go ahead and jump into it. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button, obviously. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into what we got going on. And I actually have the Tulsa Golden Hurricane coming in as not just a team that's 110 or in that 110 to 100 range. I actually have Tulsa coming in inside the top 100 going into the college football season, and they actually sit at number 97 for me going into this one. And it's really fascinating about this Tulsa football team that I really like about them is that as the year went on, Tulsa ended up being a better team. Whether it was they improved tremendously from being able to, lose a couple of heartbreakers to New Mexico State, for example, to start the season out. But then as the year grew on, what we saw this Tulsa team did was they were able to win quite a few games in conference play, able to finish off, actually get a nice win to end the year at Army. That was a solid team. Oregon State as well, being able to beat Oregon State by a few touchdowns. Of course, they had that upset against Oklahoma State on the road, which, the Cowboys were a complete disaster. But it just goes to show as the year went on, this team won two of its last three games to end the year. And while they did lose a few pieces in the transfer portal, this team is mostly intact. So I actually am somewhat high on this Tulsa team going into this year because of that fact. Because the $1 million thing that, we worried about was, what was happening on the defensive side of the ball. And I still have some of those concerns because I didn't love the backfill on the defensive side. But what I will say this, I do believe in Trey Lance's system overall. And I do also think that this running back room for Tulsa, I think is going to be a sneaky good unit going into this season. A two-headed monster that I think is going to be one of the more exciting pieces of their football team going into this season, and that's Traycon Jones, who I expect to be the starting tailback right away for the Golden Hurricane in 2026. Coming from Old Dominion, he had over 800 total yards and six touchdowns last year. But definitely keep an eye on the true freshman in Jamerka Platter, who was a high three-star recruit for this Tulsa football team going into this season. He was a high three-star recruit, could get on the field maybe in some kind of contributor role or at least as a special teams person, which I think would be extremely valuable heading into this season, right? But like I mentioned, though, it's not perfect. They did lose some pieces in the transfer portal, and none of those pieces that they lost uh, was more important than Brady Foley, who was an absolute star for them last year and was a big reason why Tulsa got better as the year went on. The tight end did end up transferring to Louisville to kind of give Lincoln Kyle-Holtz, who's going to be a first-time starter at the power conference level, or at least the first time him being a full-time starter. Brady Foley is looking to be that security blanket for the Louisville Cardinals this year. So that is going to be a loss that is going to be tough to replace. They did lose a few pieces on the defensive side of the ball as well, losing Joe Hatale to Indiana, who possibly could have broken out for them this year and be a star player in the American, but instead looking to crack the starting lineup for the Indiana Hoosiers instead. They also lose Jaden Burnett on the edge, who transfers to Rutgers. So do worry about the defensive line depth a little bit here for this Tulsa football team. And then Ray Coney, he's a linebacker. He transfers to Texas A&M. Again, another guy that I thought could have been a potential breakout candidate for this Tulsa football team this fall. Well, he's going to Texas A&M, is going to be looking to get some meaningful playing time with the Aggies, a team that did make the college football playoff last year. But, overall, this team does seem like it is going to be trending in the right direction. It's just a matter of, can the defense continue to show the improvement that we saw last season, as well as trying to figure out how to replace Brady Foley's production. That's the two biggest questions. But I like Trey Lamb. I like what Trey Lamb did towards the end this year, and that his coaching is a bigger reason why I think this is a top 100 football team going into this season, in spite of what they lost in the transfer portal going into this fall. But hey, let me go ahead and dig into, what is Tulsa's schedule outlook going to be looking like as we get things ready to go for this upcoming season, right? And, for Tulsa, once again, we do see them play Oklahoma State. They had a home and home agreed upon, and this time Tulsa gets to host Oklahoma State. Now, it's going to be a much improved football team in comparison to last season. This is not a Mike Gundy led football team that we saw for, for a lot of folks that are my age. Mike Gundy has been a part of that Oklahoma State football program for a vast majority of my life, right? But now we have a brand new person in charge, a breath of fresh air, and Eric Morris brought a lot of his guys from North Texas over. So I do think that there is some good pieces there for the Cowboys. So even though that game is going to be at home, that's going to be a tough ask for Tulsa to be able to pull that off 2 years in a row. And then they do also play Arkansas on the road as well. That's a team that does have some new leadership in Ryan Silverfield. I imagine the Razorbacks are going to be a little bit better. I don't know if it's going to be significantly better, but that's also a tough ask for the Golden Hurricane. And then also some tough road games in here going into this year, going up and playing Navy on the road, as well as playing Tulane, which has been one of the tougher environments in the American to have to play in this conference. But none of them are as tough as UTSA's Alamo Dome. UTSA was practically unstoppable in the conference play, especially at home. UTSA has been a problem inside their own stadium, but also some very winnable games here as well. And I think that's why I certainly have them kind of projecting them as a bowl team. I do think that Trey Lamb is going to make a jump, which is important because the American is a difficult conference from top to bottom for the most part, with the exception of a couple of teams. But they do have Sam Houston on the road. I'm not really very big on Phil Longo and his staff right now. East Texas A&M, I feel that's a very safe win. Don't know much about East Texas A&M, but that's not a great FCS program, so I think Tulsa's going to be fine there. They also have Charlotte at home and Tim Albin. I don't think they're going to make that much of a significant jump. I think they're going to be arguably bottom of the barrel in the FCS, or in the, not only in this conference, but in all of major college football. Then, in terms of three other wins that I think that they get, they get North Texas, which that team looks really different. And honestly, Neil Brown's going to have to prove himself because he got fired at his last job. And the last time that he was successful was well before the NIL era. So, some questions about North Texas, as that team's going to look completely different. Rice, definitely don't want to play with food, but at the same time, you look at this Rice Owl squad, and they just don't have a ton of talent still that Scott Abel is going to be able to navigate through. And then Florida Atlantic, don't know what to think about Florida Atlantic. Zach Kitney was a little bit of a disappointment last year, but I think there's 6 wins there, and I think there's possibly 7, depending on what happens with Army. Army isn't a super talented team; they can get them at home, so that game is certainly winnable as well. So I have Tulsa going 6-6 this fall, with the opportunity to possibly level up as a 7-5 team. I do think that it's one of the easier schedules in this conference. I have them projected out as the third easiest schedule Only East Carolina and USF as a whole have easier schedules than what Tulsa does, combined with the fact that I do think that this is going to be an overall improved football team based upon, that continuity outside those few defensive guys that I talked about, as well as Brady Foley. I think Tulsa's going to be just fine, but I'm curious to hear what you guys think. I know I went a little bit out of order to talk about Tulsa specifically, but man, I'm just curious to hear what you guys think. Hearing Tulsa as a top 100 team, am I too high or too low in this team? Definitely let me know down in the comment section as well. And then on top of that, it does take a tremendous amount of work to make sure that these deep dives get done and get posted up on YouTube. When it comes to making the graphics and doing the recording, there's a lot of work that's done in the background. So hitting that like button and hitting that subscribe button too, that really does help me from the bottom of my heart. So I would truly appreciate that if you guys could do those things. But hey, for now, this is Jake from College Football Red Zone signing off. But hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.